March 1974. Fort George Island, Florida. A brushfire had swept through a stretch of wooded property owned by the Betz family. Terry, a 21-year-old pre-med student at the time, was walking the scorched land with his parents, Antoine and Jerry, assessing the damage. Checking what the fire had taken. Checking what it had left. And there, in the blackened grass, something caught the light. A sphere. Metal. About 20 centimeters in diameter, roughly the size of a bowling ball. Perfectly smooth. Stainless steel in appearance. No rust, despite being outside. No seams. No welds. No visible openings of any kind. Just one small, faint marking on its surface, a shape, an etching, something that didn't immediately suggest any obvious origin. The fire had scorched everything around it. But the sphere was completely unaffected. Unmarked. Perfect. Terry picked it up. It was heavier than he expected. Dense. Solid, as far as he could tell. He brought it home. He had absolutely no idea what he'd just started. Let me tell you a little about the Betz family, because I think their ordinariness is part of what makes this story so compelling. Antoine Betz was a retired military officer. Jerry was his wife. Terry was their son, studying medicine, home for a period. They lived on Fort George Island, a barrier island just north of Jacksonville, Florida. It's a quiet, wooded place. Spanish moss and palmetto. Old Florida atmosphere. Not the kind of place where extraordinary things usually happen. They were practical people. Antoine had a military background, orderly, methodical. The kind of family that, when they found a strange metal sphere in the woods, their first instinct was to try to figure out what it was, not to spin stories about it. They looked at it. They examined it. They couldn't identify it. So they took it inside. And that's when things got interesting. For several weeks, the Betz family kept the sphere in their home. During that time, they claimed to observe behaviors that they found impossible to explain. The sphere was placed on the floor. It rolled. Not randomly, but in patterns. It would travel across the floor, stop, change direction, come back. Terry described it rolling across a table and stopping exactly at the edge, as if it sensed the drop. They also reported that the sphere seemed to respond to sound. When music was played, particularly guitar music, the sphere appeared to vibrate or hum. Quietly. But noticeably enough that multiple family members commented on it. And occasionally, unprompted, the sphere would produce a low throbbing sound of its own. The family kept this to themselves for weeks. They weren't looking for attention. They were genuinely trying to understand what they had. Eventually, the story leaked. A journalist at the Jacksonville, Florida Times-Union got wind of it, March 1974, some accounts say, though the timeline in various sources gets slightly muddled, and the Betz Sphere, as it was now being called, went public. And the world lost its mind a little bit. Remember, this was 1974. The Cold War was still very much alive. Space exploration was in everyone's consciousness. The Apollo program had ended just the year before. UFO reports were a regular feature of newspapers. The cultural appetite for mysterious technology, for unknown objects, for things that science couldn't immediately explain, was enormous. The Betz Sphere hit that appetite perfectly. A perfect metal ball, found in scorched woods, that moved on its own and hummed to music. The stories wrote themselves. Satellite probe. Space technology. Extraterrestrial artifact. Soviet surveillance device. Every theory that the era could produce got applied to this 20-centimeter metal ball in a family home in Florida. Antoine and Jerry Betz found themselves doing interviews. Terry did television appearances. The sphere was photographed, filmed, written about. And importantly, scientists and officials started paying attention. Because in the Cold War context, an unidentified metallic object of unknown origin was not purely a curiosity. It was potentially a matter of national security. Let's slow down and go through the physical description of the sphere carefully, because the details matter and I want you to picture this properly. The sphere was approximately 20 centimeters, about 8 inches, in diameter. It weighed roughly 22 pounds, or about 10 kilograms. That's genuinely heavy for its size, denser than you'd expect from a hollow object, lighter than you'd expect from solid steel. The surface was smooth, highly polished, with what appeared to be a stainless steel finish. There were no visible seams, no weld lines, no bolts, no screws, no openings of any kind on its surface. Whatever was inside, if anything was inside, was completely enclosed. The single marking on its surface was described as a triangle or triangular symbol, etched or stamped into the metal. It was small and faint. Different observers described it slightly differently. Some said it looked like an arrow or an eye. Some said it was a simple equilateral triangle. The inconsistency in descriptions is worth noting. It suggests the marking was subtle enough to be ambiguous. One detail that every person who handled it seemed to agree on: it felt significant. Not magical, just weighty, precise, and deliberate. Like a machined object of real quality. The kind of thing that, if you picked it up, you'd think, someone made this carefully. Someone knew what they were doing. The question was who? In April 1974, just weeks after the story went public, the sphere was examined by the U.S. Navy. Specifically, it was taken to the Naval Air Station in Jacksonville, Florida, where it was subjected to a series of tests. X-rays were taken. The material composition was examined. The weight and density were measured carefully. The X-rays revealed something immediately interesting. The sphere was not solid. Inside, there appeared to be 3 smaller spheres, or sphere-like objects, arranged around a central axis or core. The internal structure was clearly deliberate and manufactured. This was not a natural object. This was not a geological formation. This was made. The Navy's analysis of the external material identified it as 300 series stainless steel, a specific alloy used in precision manufacturing. The surface finish was consistent with high-quality machining. The sphere showed no signs of radioactivity. No explosive material. No propulsion system. Nothing that indicated it was a weapon or a surveillance device. What the Navy could not immediately determine was where it was made, who made it, and what it was for. Their conclusion, at least publicly, was essentially, this is a high-quality manufactured object of unknown purpose and unknown origin. Which, in the middle of the Cold War, was simultaneously reassuring and deeply unsatisfying. The Navy returned it to the Betz family. The investigation was considered concluded. But the story wasn't over. After the Navy examination, a series of other researchers and institutions took interest in the sphere. This is where the story gets genuinely fascinating, because different investigators found different things, and the picture that emerged was more interesting than a simple, "this is a machine part" explanation. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, an astronomer who had spent years as the scientific advisor to the U.S. Air Force's UFO investigation program, Project Blue Book, examined the sphere and found it genuinely puzzling. He noted that the internal structure revealed by X-ray was unusual and that the precision of the manufacturing was consistent with aerospace or industrial fabrication at the highest levels. Other physicists and engineers who examined it noted the following: the density and weight distribution were unusual. The interior structure, whatever those 3 internal objects were, was arranged in a way that had no obvious functional explanation for a simple ball bearing or industrial component. The surface polish exceeded what would be needed for most practical application. And then there were the behavioral reports. Researchers who visited the Betz home and observed the sphere firsthand described, some of them, seeing the sphere move in ways that surprised them. Roll in curved paths. Stop at edges. One researcher described placing it on a sloped surface and watching it roll uphill for a short distance. Now, I want to be careful here, because a researcher said they saw it roll uphill is a very different level of evidence than here is a controlled experiment that demonstrated it. And that distinction, between compelling personal testimony and rigorous scientific documentation, is at the heart of what makes the Betz Sphere story so interesting to think through. Let's talk about the behavior. Because I think dismissing the family's observations outright is as much of a mistake as accepting them uncritically. The truth, as usual, is in the middle. A smooth, dense, perfectly spherical object on a floor will roll. It will roll in response to imperceptible vibrations in the floor, footsteps in another room, traffic outside, even airflow from a vent. A perfectly smooth sphere is extraordinarily sensitive to minute slopes and surface variations that a human would never notice. The claim that it rolled and stopped and changed direction, entirely consistent with normal physics on a slightly uneven surface with a very smooth, very heavy, very frictionless ball. The stopping at the edge of a table claim is also physically explainable. A sphere rolling slowly on a surface will decelerate as it approaches an edge, not because it senses the edge, but because of surface friction variations, microvibrations from the impact of a rolling object approaching a boundary, and simple deceleration physics. It's not magic. It's mechanics. The humming or vibrating in response to music? Also physically plausible. A dense metal sphere can act as a resonator, a tuning fork effect. At certain frequencies, a stainless steel object of that size and mass will respond sympathetically. The specific note or chord that activated the sphere would simply be one whose frequency happened to match a resonant frequency of the metal. This is basic acoustic physics. But here's where I want to push back on the purely debunking mindset for a moment. The experience of watching a metal sphere roll, stop, change direction, and hum in your living room, even if every individual behavior has a mundane explanation, is genuinely uncanny. Human pattern recognition is extraordinary. When you observe these behaviors in sequence, in the absence of an obvious cause, your brain will construct a narrative of intention and agency. The Betz family weren't lying. They weren't hallucinating. They were experiencing something real, and interpreting it, as any human would, through the most compelling available framework. Which in 1974, in an era of space exploration and Cold War paranoia, was, this object is extraordinary. So what was it? The explanation, when it finally arrived, was this: the Betz sphere was almost certainly a survey marker ball, also called a geodetic survey ball or a ball bearing from an industrial or aerospace application. Specifically, the most widely accepted identification is that it was a type of stainless steel ball used in certain aerospace components and precision industrial machinery. These objects were manufactured to extraordinarily high tolerances, which explains the perfect surface finish, the absence of visible seams, and the quality of the machining. They were made to be precise. They were made to be smooth. They were made to last. The internal structure visible in the X-rays, those three sphere-like objects inside, is consistent with certain types of ball-within-ball machined components used in precision bearings or calibration equipment. The specific alloy, 300 series stainless steel, is standard for this type of application. The single marking, almost certainly a manufacturer's mark or identification stamp, common on precision industrial components for quality control purposes. How did it end up on the Betz property after a brushfire? That part is genuinely unclear. The property was near areas that had, at various times, been used for industrial or military-adjacent activities. It may have been lost or discarded years earlier and simply never found until the fire cleared the vegetation. It may have fallen from a vehicle. It may have been on the property for decades. The honest answer is, we know what it probably was. We don't know how it got there. And that gap, that small remaining unknown, is probably why the story has never fully died. Here's the thing about explanations. They should feel like relief. You had a question, you got an answer, the anxiety resolves, you move on. That's how explanations are supposed to work. The Betz sphere explanation doesn't feel like that. Not entirely. And I've been thinking about why. Part of it is the how. It was probably a survey ball, doesn't explain how it ended up unmarked and perfect in the middle of a fire-scorched field on a private property. There's a gap there. Probably where you'd want it definitely. Part of it is that the explanation, even if correct, doesn't capture the experience. The Betz family didn't just find a weird metal ball. They spent weeks living with an object that behaved strangely in their home. Even if every behavior has a physical explanation, the rolling, the humming, the resonance, living with those experiences changes you. It's not something you can just file away as industrial component, case closed. Part of it is that 1974 never fully got its closure. The family kept the sphere. There was no definitive public statement from a recognized institution saying, "We have identified this conclusively." There was no manufacturer who came forward and said, "That's ours." The explanation emerged gradually, through scientific consensus and educated inference, not through a single satisfying moment of revelation. And part of it, if I'm honest, is that we don't always want the explanation. There's a version of this story where the sphere is extraordinary, where the family found something genuinely beyond current human understanding. And that version is more exciting, more meaningful, more worth talking about. And the human brain, when given a choice between a story that's exciting and a story that's true, will sometimes lobby for the exciting one, even when it knows better. A question that comes up every time the Betz sphere is discussed: where is it now? The honest answer is, we don't know with certainty. The Betz family kept the sphere after all the investigations concluded. Unlike many objects that become part of media feeding frenzies, it was never acquired by a museum or institution. It remained private property. Terry Betz, who was the one most closely associated with the sphere in public coverage, gave occasional interviews over the years. In some accounts, the family eventually became weary of the attention and the constant requests to examine the sphere again. The requests never fully stopped, even decades later. I want to be clear, I have not been able to verify the current location definitively, and any source that claims to know for certain should be treated with caution. What I can tell you is this: as of the time of available reporting, no institution has publicly claimed to have the original Betz sphere on display or in collection. It has not appeared in any verified public auction or sale. It exists somewhere, in someone's possession, carrying with it all the weight of the strange weeks in 1974 when a family in Florida tried to figure out what they'd found in the ashes. And honestly, the fact that it's still somewhere out there, still private, still a little mysterious, still unexhibited and unclaimed, seems fitting. Some things hold their mystery better when they're not pinned under museum glass. I keep coming back to the image of Terry Betz, 21 years old, walking through a scorched field with his parents, and picking up a metal sphere that caught the light. He didn't know what he was picking up. He just knew it was worth picking up. That's something about it, the perfection of it, the weight of it, the strangeness of it sitting unmarked and undamaged in the middle of all that ash, said, "Pay attention. This matters." And he was right to pay attention. Not because the sphere turned out to be an alien artifact or a Soviet probe, but because paying attention to strange things is how we learn. It's how science works. It's how stories worth telling get told. You see something that doesn't fit your existing categories. You don't look away. You stay with it. You ask questions. The answers the Betz family got weren't the ones the world was hoping for. But that's usually how it goes. Reality is more subtle than our most exciting hypotheses. It rewards careful attention more than dramatic imagination. The Betz sphere. A family in Florida. A metal ball in the ashes. A few weeks of genuine mystery. And a story that, 50 years later, still makes people lean forward and ask, but wait, are they sure? Yeah. I get that. I really do. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. And I'll see you in the next one.